If you like this video, click like. If you want to continue to follow our adventure, hit subscribe. Your support would be greatly appreciated. Hello, Laws of the Road subscribers and followers. Well, you know what today is? It's Friday, which means Easy 5 Friday. And so today's topic is 5 of our fears living in a pop-up camper. Yep. I've mentioned before, I mean, you know, we're always terrified of everything out here. And people say, oh, you're so brave. Well, if you know how scary it was, sometimes you may not say that. I mean, I understand what everybody's saying. We're brave because we've overcome the fear and we're, you know, looking at it head on. But those fears still exist. So I thought I'd just break them down into top 5, get through them real quick. And I'm sure a lot of people that come out here to do these kind of things, there are obstacles and fears that they really want to, you know, understand and try to control and head on, face on, that kind of stuff. So I'll start with the first one, storms. Storms are a big one, and we're always asked a lot, what are you going to do about a storm? Well, we've been through storms, and they're always concerning. And we always try to find something to deal with storms. I mean, you know, our plan is, and I'll put a link to a video that I made, last video I made about, you know, weather. I'll put it right here. But we always, you know, lower the canopy, get the pop-up secured as quickly as possible, which is, by the way, one of the reasons we don't have a screened-in porch or anything, or a canopy. I don't know what you call them. We don't have one of those because of storms. It just would be another thing that we'd have to deal with, get put away. So we don't have one. But we've slept in the truck before on high wind. You know, we lowered the canopy on the camper, stayed in the truck. We always look for culverts that we can stay in the event of a tornado. We try to find buildings that we can stay in, sometimes privies. You know, when we went to Tennessee, we just got set up. We didn't have time to break it back down, to be honest. Just got set up, and the campsite host came around and said, there's a tornado warning. I suggest you go into the restrooms. So we did. That was the only secured structure. It's not that we're afraid of the storm. We're afraid, you know, look at all these trees. I mean, you know, they can fall down, and so I don't know, maybe fear isn't the right word, but definitely strong respect for storms. So I think, quite honestly, you know, everybody says that I'm more at risk in a pop-up, but I think that all campers are at risk in storms. You know, I've heard stories, $100,000 RV, branch shoved right through the roof. So, you know, I don't think having a more expensive piece of equipment or rig protects you from storms any more than you know, a pop-up. So, and I know there's going to be arguments with that. I get it. I mean, I'm not silly. I recognize that a pop-up is a little bit more fragile. Number 2, and when I say this, I don't want everybody to assume that I'm scared of the actual thing. Number 2 is death. I'm not afraid of dying. So let's not put it that way. I recognize that I'm going to die. I get it. To be more specific, I am worried more about me dying for Carolyn. That is mine. I'm not going to try to explain Carolyn's fear of this. I'm going to explain my fear. I am afraid for her if I were to die. You know, she doesn't drive. Now, that's not to say she's not very resourceful. She will figure this out. And as a matter of fact, when we were talking about this, she, you know, feels like that she has a network of, again, we don't have friends, but there are people who are interested in this lifestyle that she has gotten acquaintance. That's the best word to use. She has acquaintances that would be interested in joining her in this adventure. So again, she's not destitute that if I were to die. But I have always feared that if I died, you know, what would her plan be? What would she do? Now, Carolyn is not a big planner. That's my job. I do all the planning. Carolyn kind of lives by the moment. So it's even difficult for her to even kind of think about this. Like, well, you know, I'll figure it out when the time comes. But I'm just worried about her. So it is always on my mind that if I get sick or if I die, you know, what's going to happen with Carolyn? How do I protect her? How do I continue to protect her even though I'm not around? So it is just one of those things that is always in the back of my mind. I'm not sure, to be honest, if I would, why I would feel any different in a stick and brick. I'm not sure I understand that. I didn't have that concern when we lived in the house, but I do out here. So that is just one of those fears. Number 3. This one's kind of a broad category. You know, when Carolyn and I were discussing it, we said, okay, the fear of the unknown. Well, everything we do is unknown. We really don't know what's next. I always get kind of worried when it's time to move on to another campsite. I've made video after video after video about that. Does it have water? Does it have the resources we need? Does it have this? Does it have that? Blah, 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 blah. But there are a lot of unknowns. It's endless. I just talked about storms and death. Both of those are unknowns. It's just a wide category. Carolyn has her own definition. But for some reason, when you don't know what is going to happen next, out here, okay, out here, seems to be more amplified out here than it is in a stick and brick. I've tried to explain this in several nuances, that for whatever reason, things out here make us worry more than we would have in a house. And I think it's because that when we grew up, we were raised in a house. We know how to deal with the unexpected, the unknowns. We've never been taught how to deal with the unknowns out here. The unknowns of the wildlife. Bears. When I first was introduced to the idea of a bear, I was, what? Bears? There's bears here? Oh my goodness. And so I had to educate myself on the concept of bears. Black bears. I recognize brown bears are different. And, you know, over time I've learned that it's just something I need to be cautious of, but I don't have to live in fear of bears. The bears around here seem to be more scared of us than I am of them now. So there is just, anytime you walk into these situations out here, it seems like the unknowns are more amplified fearfully. Or the fear of the unknowns are more amplified. That's probably the better way to put it. I kind of briefly mentioned this one, but we take this one very seriously. As a matter of fact, I've made a video about it. I don't know if it'll be posted before this one or after, but if it is, if I have made this video, if it's already been posted, then I'll put the link right here. But getting sick is always a big one. It's always a big one. We're always worried about getting sick, because the same as death, what would the other one do? And then you got the added obstacle of having to take care of the sick person. It's not that we couldn't handle it, but it sure would make life a lot more difficult if we got seriously sick. You know, we got some sort of food poisoning where you're vomiting and you got, you know, you're having to use the bathroom more regularly. It would become a real chore. So we almost obsessive about keeping our hands clean, making sure food is cooked, making sure that we're not eating berries, and, you know, all these things. You know, getting bit by a strange bug, one that we've never seen before. You know, I've been told twice now about horror stories about brown recluse bites. Oh my goodness. How would you even try to take care of that out here? I mean, I'm sure we would, but wow. Okay, and then finally, the last fear is something happening to the truck / trailer, camper. The longer we're at this, the easier it has gotten. But one of the most significant fears getting started was, what if the truck breaks down? What are we going to do? We're way out here. Now we have backup plans, and I've actually made a video about backup plans. I'll put that here, assuming that it has been posted. But if the truck breaks down or the trailer breaks, what are we going to do? I mean, you got to come up with a solution. Well, I mean, like I said, as time goes on, things have gotten easier. We've come up with, you know, semi-quasi plans and backup plans on how we're going to deal with all that. But recognize, here's the point of this video. Recognize, before you come out here, you're going to be just overwhelmed by different fears. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? Well, I mean, look at all the questions I get about people asking, well, even the truck one. I've been asked about, what are you going to do if the truck breaks down? And I explain to them what I'm going to do when the truck breaks down. And they think, oh, that's a really good idea. I was really worried about that. And I think one person had decided that they weren't going to go on with their adventure because they were worried about the truck breaking down. So recognize that these fears can paralyze you if you just look at the fear, not try and figure out ways around the fear. And so that's important. You know you have a fear. What are my options to overcome it? What can I do? So, anyway, that's the 5 fears that we either have or had, or, you know, things that we had to overcome mentally so we can continue to do this, or do this adventure. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Click like if you like the video, and happy travels.